What would you do if the most trusted person betrayed you? What if the vows you believed were sacrosanct turned out to signify nothing? This is precisely what happened to me. I discovered my wife was cheating on me, and it ripped my life apart. But instead of simply walking away, I made a decision. I was not going to let her and her affair partner get away with it. What followed was a voyage of sorrow, discovery, and premeditated vengeance that I never imagined I'd undertake. But before we begin, please subscribe. It truly drives me to bring you more stories like this. Let's dive in. I, 34, have married Fiona, 35, for 7 years, and our marriage has been excellent. I won't lie to myself and claim we had a fantastic marriage because there have been many arguments, but the love is still beneath it all. At least, that's what I assumed, but I was the only one of us two who thought that way. Anyway, we get things done, and that's what matters. Let me get to the beginning of the story. We had one of our fights. One thing you should know about Fiona is that she has a terrible habit of completely shutting down when faced. Whether you approach her aggressively or attempt to sound as delicate and clean as a nun, it makes no difference. When she understands there is a confrontation, she refuses to engage. It is one of the things that drives me mad, and it means that I rarely get to hear her honest thoughts on our disagreements or arguments. As a result, I tend to avoid arguments because they irritate me so much, but this does not prevent them from occurring. So we fought over having children. I've always been fid, though I'd answer no. Then she stopped talking. That drove me insane since it was an essential conflict to resolve or see through to completion. I genuinely wanted to know where she stood and if she understood my points, but she just switched off. So I left her in the living room and went about doing other things around the house. I noticed her furiously typing on her phone, which piqued my interest because I suspected she was telling someone, possibly one of her sisters or friends, her genuine feelings. I was tired of not knowing, and I resolved to find out whatever for something as important as this. So, the next chance I got, I grabbed her phone and reviewed some of her talks. However, nothing was there when she first met her sisters. They discussed family problems. The difficulty began when I decided to peek into her negotiations with one of her girlfriends, and I discovered far more than I expected. There was nothing related to our argument. Technically, it was mentioned very passively at the beginning of the last chat, which led me to what I'm here to discuss. She went to her friend to explain how we had a significant dispute over kids, and her friend apologized. However, that was almost all they said about me because my wife's following sentence was, "It's getting harder not to entertain leaving him for Aaron, especially when we both want a whole house." After reading that, I felt woozy and had to sit down. It was like a real sucker hit because that was the last thing I expected to see. I had to put her phone down, and it was a good thing I did because she entered the room about 2 minutes later. However, it indicated that I needed to do further digging. I had to find out who Aaron was. And as much as I believed she was sleeping with this person, I needed to confirm it and determine how long it had been going on. So, the next time I used her phone, I looked up the name Aaron. Not only did I discover his contact information on her phone, but I also noticed that he had been mentioned several times in chats with 2 of her very close female friends. I was relieved to note that while one of them was entertained by her Aaron talk, the other sought to talk reason into her, given that she was married. She did not listen because that was the last time she had mentioned Aaron to that friend. The actual specifics were in her interaction with the guy, which gave me all the necessary confirmation. The talk began a little over a year ago and was about work, indicating that Aaron was her co-worker. She hadn't mentioned him before. I couldn't read the entire conversation log, but by scrolling down and pausing at specific points, I could see how things became more flirtatious. When I watched them delivering thirst traps to each other, I realized how serious their connection had become. They were the types who were beyond misinterpretation. When they were done chatting, I noticed him asking when they would see each other again. Given that Aaron and Fiona are co-workers, they must be referring to an intimate situation. I believe that was the moment I understood I was done with her for good. I've taken screenshots and video recordings, and I've attempted every possible method of documentation. I know something huge, and she has no idea. Something about that makes me feel powerful, and I'm already beginning to detest her. That's why I want to make sure I struck her. I refuse to give up and let her feel like she has won. I'll figure something out and let you know how it goes. I've considered doing something, learning more about this Aaron dude. I want to know where he lives so that I may confront him. I'm not in the mood for a brawl, but I won't back down if one breaks out. I need someone to vent my frustrations. He would be an excellent option. I haven't done anything yet, but I learned some vital knowledge I want to use. My wife's affair partner already has a wife. She almost certainly knows this, but is still sleeping with him, just as he, as a married guy, is aware Fiona is married, but continues to sleep with her. As one of the involved spouses, I am fortunate to know what is going on. However, his wife is unaware. I understand that some individuals in relationships prefer to remain ignorant, but I will tell her what's going on, whether that's her preference. If I can cause his relationship to falter and possibly end, it will be one element of the equation that pleases me. As for Fiona, I've started looking for divorce lawyers and have narrowed it down to 2. No matter my choice, I'll not be disappointed. I'm already prepared for her. I want to ensure that every step of this, even presenting her with the papers, causes her great pain. All I have to hope for is that everything goes my way. I never imagined that seeking to expose a cheating husband would be so helpful to me. I'm glad I went this route since it has paid off handsomely for me. Aaron's wife's name is Kate, and she is beautiful. It makes me question why Aaron can't keep his hands off other people's spouses when he has a lovely wife at home, but I understand that cheating isn't all about appearance. I contacted Kate via Facebook, and although it took many days, she responded. I told her I needed to talk to her about her spouse and that I'd like to meet in person in a public area, but she flatly refused, insisting that I could tell her whatever it was, no matter how heavy, via text. I didn't want to do it that way, because it felt harsh, but she insisted. First, I told her it was about her husband, hoping that would lessen the shock. After a few minutes, when I was sure she had read it, I informed her that her husband had been sleeping with my wife. They'd been having an affair for some months. It took over an hour before she responded, "Thank you." I inquired if she was well, as that seemed like a very blank response, but she claimed she was tired of him and his antics. She had caught him cheating before. She had confronted him twice previously, both times taking him back. He did a much better job concealing his tracks the third time, because she said she had no idea and probably wouldn't have if I hadn't said anything. She had been in the dark, just like me, and I was relieved I had done something about it. She declared she couldn't do this with him longer, and then, out of nowhere, she added, "What about we meet up after all?" A taste of their own medicine. I had to read that about 5 times because I felt like my brain was only reading the most distorted version of it. However, I eventually convinced myself that I understood exactly what she suggested. Do you know what the crazy thing is? I've always considered marriage as an institution that should never be tarnished by infidelity or other idiotic things that might happen in a marriage. But my perspective shifted the instant I discovered Fiona was cheating on me. It did not modify the concept of marriage in general, but rather the idea of marriage with her. I knew that it was no longer pure, and whatever transpired after that point was irrelevant. So, without shame, even now, I met Kate at her place when our spouses were at work, and we slept together. What is the best part? It was very excellent. Some of you may say that I'm as awful as Fiona, and I don't think I'll ever agree because I wouldn't have done this if she hadn't cheated. Cheating had never crossed my thoughts before I learned about Aaron. After that, I no longer saw us as having a real marriage, and to show you how little shame I felt about it, it happened again. And again. I believe it was the only thing keeping me sane while living in the same house as a wife I knew was cheating on me. However, for Kate and myself, it is simply enjoyable. No wedding bells are ringing, and she admits that the fun may be coming to an end. So now it's time for me to acquire those divorce papers. The entire odyssey with my now ex-wife has finally come to a close, and it ended very pleasantly, at least for me. I cannot speak for her. I started by preparing the divorce papers. I hired a process server to serve her at her workplace during her shift, and I sincerely wish I could have been present. I felt a lot of satisfaction when she kept calling and I didn't answer any of them. She was also sending many angry messages, but it appeared like she was still in shock. She eventually returned home that night, enraged. On a normal day, I would have found her fury alarming, but it was simply hilarious for me. I chuckled too many times, and she became even more agitated. She eventually asked why I hadn't responded, and it was the only question she could ask from then on. So I eventually decided to respond and inform her that I knew her romance with Aaron. I knew the entire situation, including him being an unnamed coworker and her desire to have his children. Her face paled when she realized how much I learned. I mentioned that I had all of the evidence I needed to ruin her in divorce court, and I believe she rushed for my phone in a fit of rage. I'm not sure if she intended to keep it hostage, destroy it, or try to wipe the evidence. I'll never know because I got there first. Even if she attempted to delete it, all the evidence was backed up, and my lawyer had copies. The head loss was wild. I instructed her to collect her things and leave, but she collapsed to the floor and began weeping uncontrollably. Even after 3 hours of curling up and sobbing, she didn't try to leave the house. Unfortunately, the residence was legal for both of us, so I couldn't contact the cops to get her out. When I got tired of everything, I left the house. She understood how much worse it was when she phoned me every 5 minutes after I left. Her entire existence came crashing down, and I was overjoyed to be the architect of it. The next time she saw me was when I returned to the house to grab more belongings. She crawled across the floor behind me, begging and pleading. She insisted it was a mistake, but it was an affair. It was not a one-time event. Even if you forgive someone for cheating on you, don't let it become a pattern of constant lying. There was no way I would accept her back, but she must have believed there was still a glimmer of hope. Finally, the divorce proceedings began, and I had everything I needed to make a strong case for myself. The best part was that we made nearly the same amount and didn't have children. Thank God. Despite her best efforts, she was unable to obtain alimony. There wasn't much to split, but I could easily take the house because she had been unfaithful. There was no need for me to change my life just because someone else was cheating. I packed up most of her belongings and gave her a date to come pick them up. A police officer was on standby to avoid any drama. After Fiona left the house, I felt truly free. I probably won't stay here since I need a fresh start, but for now I'm relieved to be away from her. I learned from Kate that she has begun divorce proceedings with her husband, which brings me to my final act of vengeance. I asked to meet Fiona in a nearby cafe, and she came up, albeit she seemed perplexed about what I wanted from her. I told her I had one thing to say. I struck her back similarly once I found out about her and Aaron. I told her that before our divorce I slept with Aaron's wife several times. Her mouth was open and she shook her head in astonishment. She claimed I didn't even know his wife, but she eventually believed me after I told her her name and where they lived. Her hands were shaking, but I wasn't sure if she was about to cry or if she was enraged. I didn't care to find out and just left her there. I spoke with Kate the following workday and told her what I wanted to do. Surprised, she had no objections as long as I didn't leave any trace, so she told me I was parked outside their office within minutes when Aaron departed for work. When I saw his car pull up, I got out and approached him. When I went up, he seemed perplexed, but I explained that I was Fiona's husband. Sorry, ex-husband. He took a step back as soon as he noticed me. I believe he was being careful. I told him I wasn't seeking a fight unless he was, and I had no hard feelings. I extended my hand, and just as he was going to reach for it, I informed him that I had no hard feelings because I had slept with his wife in the same way that he had slept with mine. His hand dropped so quickly and he didn't know how to respond to hearing that. After approximately 10 seconds, he cursed me out and went away. I was hoping he'd throw a punch so I could beat the snot out of him, but that didn't happen. Kate told me she had moved out of the house that same day while he was at work, so she wasn't concerned about what he would do. I hope she gets everything she deserves in her divorce because unfaithful partners are the worst. Anyway, that's it. I'm relieved that I've seen the end of a messy marriage. Now I can concentrate on the days ahead of me. That's it for today's video. If you enjoyed it and want to see more content like this, please make sure to subscribe to my channel. It really motivates me to work harder and bring you even better content. Don't forget to like the video and share your thoughts in the comments below. I'll see you in the next video. Take care.